Leora moved through the cold metal corridors of the astral rim outpost with a quiet grace that made her almost invisible to the few sentries she passed. Her long silver hair flowed behind her, and her green eyes glimmered in the dim lights of the facility. Beside her, Silun, her small dragon with scales like polished sapphire, padded silently on clawed feet. The dragon's wings were folded neatly, and its golden eyes scanned every shadow. They had arrived at the outpost after weeks of traveling across broken planets and ruined moons. Leora had been sent to observe the military activity and offer assistance if needed. The outpost was supposed to be quiet, but something in the air told her otherwise. There was a tension that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand. The alien doctors had been preparing the medbay for an emergency that had yet to arrive. The walls of the facility were a pale metallic gray, lined with tubes and devices that hummed softly, and the smell of antiseptic was strong. Leora noticed the alien staff moving in frantic patterns even before the alarm sounded. The alarm came as a shrill sound that echoed through the corridors. A human had been brought in, and the report said the injuries were severe. 17 broken bones, fractured ribs, crushed limbs, the list went on, and the alien doctors panicked. Leora watched as they flitted from one piece of equipment to another, voices rising in anxious tones, hands trembling as they tried to stabilize the human. The human was a young woman named Claire who had been caught in a tunnel collapse during reconnaissance. She was unconscious when she arrived, but her breathing was steady. Leora stepped forward and placed a hand on Claire's shoulder. The human blinked awake, eyes widening slightly as she took in the room. Despite the obvious pain and the extensive injuries, Claire's face remained calm. There was a softness in her gaze and a quiet determination that made Leora pause. Silun pressed close to the human, curling around her legs protectively. The dragon's small body radiated warmth, and Leora could feel the bond forming between the two. The alien doctors were muttering among themselves, their gestures frantic and exaggerated. One of them waved a bright blue instrument in the air, signaling that the human might not survive. Leora ignored the chaos and knelt beside Claire, speaking in a low voice. She told her to breathe slowly and to focus on one thing at a time. Claire followed the instructions without hesitation. She shifted her eyes to Leora and gave a small nod, acknowledging the elf's presence. Leora could sense the strength beneath the surface. Claire's calmness was not ignorance of the situation, but a conscious choice to remain composed. The elf recognized this as the mark of someone who had faced danger before. The alien doctors were still trying to adjust mechanical supports and monitors. Leora observed each motion carefully. She could see which devices were functioning correctly and which ones were not. She made small corrections, nudging levers and pressing hidden buttons with her fingers. Each adjustment seemed to calm the alien staff slightly as they realized someone competent had arrived. The corridor outside the medbay was quiet for a moment before a distant explosion shook the facility. The walls vibrated and dust fell from the ceiling. Leora's ears twitched and Silun hissed softly. She placed a protective arm around Claire and whispered instructions to remain still. The human obeyed, her breathing steady as if nothing outside mattered. The elf noticed the resilience of her mind, how it resisted panic even in extreme danger. This would be invaluable in the days to come. As the hours passed, Leora stayed by Claire's side, monitoring her condition and providing calm reassurance. She observed how the alien doctors worked under pressure, learning their tendencies and methods. Silun, always close, occasionally hissed at passing personnel who came too near. The dragon's presence seemed to have a calming effect on Claire. She occasionally reached out to touch the soft scales of Silun's back, a small smile appearing despite the pain. The bond between human and dragon was immediate and undeniable. Leora found herself feeling protective not only of the dragon but also of the human who showed courage beyond her years. The medbay became a quiet center of activity, with each staff member focused on their task. Leora coordinated their movements subtly, ensuring that nothing was overlooked. She noticed when monitors gave false readings and corrected them before the humans or aliens could react. Her presence became a silent reassurance for everyone. Outside the facility, the outpost was preparing for a potential attack. Sensors had picked up signs of enemy movement near the perimeter. Leora could hear the distant hum of engines and the occasional burst of laser fire in the distance. She understood that the danger was real and imminent, but inside the medbay, calm prevailed. Claire, still weakened from her injuries, was able to relay information about the tunnel collapse and enemy movements. Her mind worked clearly, offering tactical advice even while her body was restrained and healing. Leora felt admiration growing for the human. She had expected fear or panic but found none. Claire's mind remained sharp and her spirit unbroken. Scylla occasionally nudged her shoulder, sensing her need for comfort, and the human allowed herself these small moments of relief. The elf knew that this calm would be a weapon as powerful as any sword or fire. As night fell over the outpost, Leora stayed vigilant. She did not sleep but remained alert, watching the human, the dragon, and the alien staff. She understood that the days ahead would be filled with challenges and battles. Yet, in this quiet hour, she saw the strength of a human spirit and the bond with a dragon that could change the course of events. The first part of this story was not about battles or victories, but about patience, observation, and understanding. Leora had arrived at the outpost as a silent guardian. She had found a human whose calm under unimaginable pain promised that she was more than just a soldier. Together with Selene, they formed a small circle of protection and hope, a calm force in a storm that had only just begun. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the medbay, casting pale stripes across the floor. Leora stood near Claire's bed, her eyes scanning the human's form. Claire had slept little but remained calm. Her body was heavily supported by braces and mechanical lifts, but her mind was sharp. The elf noticed how Claire would move her eyes and occasionally tap a finger to indicate understanding. Scylla sat close by his tail coiled neatly around the base of the bed. His small head tilted to watch every motion, and he hissed softly when anyone approached too closely. Alien doctors came and went, bringing supplies and checking readings. They were still nervous but less frantic than before. Leora's calm presence seemed to reassure them. Claire began speaking softly, her voice steady and firm. She explained how the tunnel had collapsed and how she had been trapped for hours. Her words were precise and careful, with details that surprised the alien staff. Leora listened closely. She could see that Claire's mind had not slowed despite her injuries. The human was already thinking about ways to prevent such accidents in the future and how to use the information for defense planning. Leora nodded slightly and offered her own observations. She suggested modifications to the structural sensors of the outpost and ways to strengthen weak points. Claire followed every suggestion and added her own thoughts. Scylla moved closer to listen, as if he understood the conversation. The bond between the three of them was growing stronger. Outside the medbay, the sounds of the outpost were changing. Engines hummed louder and distant explosions echoed through the halls. Scouts had reported enemy movement nearby. Leora felt the familiar pull of danger and instinctively positioned herself near the door. Scylla flared his wings slightly and growled low. The human, despite her condition, noticed the tension. She instructed the doctors to secure sensitive equipment and prepare emergency supplies. Her calm and clear directions made the aliens follow quickly without panic. Leora observed the scene and marveled at the human's ability to remain composed under pressure. She realized that Claire's mind worked differently. It did not panic or freeze. It analyzed and acted. The elf felt a growing respect for the human and knew that their partnership would be crucial in the coming days. Hours passed and the alien doctors completed their tasks. Leora and Scylla remained vigilant, guarding the human and the medbay. Claire rested intermittently but continued giving instructions. She coordinated patrols, checked sensor data, and suggested strategies for defense. The alien staff had begun to rely on her guidance. Even their own leaders took advice from the human who had been brought in only a day before. Leora noticed the subtle ways Scylla communicated with Claire. A twitch of his tail or a flick of his ear would signal danger or reassurance. Claire had learned to respond, moving her eyes to indicate understanding or giving a small nod to confirm instructions. The teamwork was seamless, despite the short time they had known each other. As the sun reached its highest point, a sudden tremor shook the outpost. Alarms blared and the walls vibrated from distant explosions. Leora immediately moved to protect Claire, holding her steady while Scylla hissed and flared his wings. The human, however, remained focused. She directed the staff calmly, ensuring that everyone was in position. Leora realized that her initial impression of Claire was correct. This human would not panic or falter. Her mind was strong and clear. As enemy forces approached closer, Leora and Scylla prepared for confrontation. The human continued issuing orders, making sure that defensive positions were reinforced. Alien soldiers looked to her for guidance and found reassurance in her calm voice. Leora felt a surge of pride and connection. She knew that this was only the beginning. The human's resolve was a force that could rally others even in the worst of situations. The hours passed slowly but steadily. Each movement in the medbay was coordinated, precise, and purposeful. Leora assisted when needed, helping adjust braces or moving supplies. Scylla stayed alert, occasionally letting out a warning growl. Claire's voice never wavered and her mind remained focused. She identified weak points in the outpost defenses and suggested subtle changes that could save lives. Leora listened carefully and followed her instructions. She realized that the human's calmness was contagious. Even the most nervous aliens began to act with more confidence. By late afternoon, the situation outside had grown tense. Enemy reconnaissance units were close and minor skirmishes had broken out near the perimeter. Leora and Scylla prepared to leave the medbay if needed but waited for Claire's signal. The human continued to plan and observe. Her calm assessments allowed everyone to act efficiently. She demonstrated that even injured and immobilized, she could influence the course of events. Leora watched and felt a growing respect. This was a human who could remain strong when all others faltered. Scylla shifted slightly and hissed softly, sensing the growing tension outside. Leora tightened her hold near the human's bed, ready to defend if necessary. She understood that the coming night would be filled with challenges, but with Claire's mind, silence, protection, and her own strength, they might withstand the trials ahead. The day ended with quiet moments between them. Leora remained by the human's side and Scylla stayed close. The alien doctors had settled down somewhat and the medbay was organized and prepared for emergencies. Claire gave a small smile and whispered instructions to Leora on minor improvements. The elf responded with a nod and gentle adjustments. Together they formed a quiet circle of strength, a calm force in an outpost that was preparing for war. The second part of the story focused on strategy, observation, and the quiet power of a human mind that refused to break. Leora realized that courage was not only about fighting, but also about staying calm, thinking clearly, and inspiring others. Claire exemplified this in every action and word, and Leora knew that the bond between human, elf, and dragon would become unbreakable in the challenges to come. The outpost trembled as distant explosions shook the walls. Leora stood at the entrance of the medbay, her eyes sharp and focused. Scylla crouched beside her, wings slightly spread, ready to act. Inside, Claire remained on her support frame, calm and observing. Despite her injuries, her mind worked quickly, calculating and analyzing the enemy movements. Alien soldiers rushed through the halls, checking equipment and preparing for the attack. Leora moved among them, guiding and coordinating without raising her voice. Her presence calmed the nerves of the younger soldiers. Scylla hissed at each unexpected sound, protective and alert. Outside, the medbay sensors showed enemy units approaching from multiple directions. Leora called for a quick briefing from the available commanders. Claire used her voice to direct them, her instructions precise and clear. She identified the weak points in the perimeter and suggested how to reinforce them. Alien commanders were amazed at the human's composure and insight despite her broken body. Leora watched carefully, impressed by the human's mind and resolve. The first wave of enemy scouts entered the outer courtyard. Leora led a group of soldiers with Scylla providing cover. The dragon unleashed a controlled fire, driving the scouts back without harming the structures. Claire directed the defense, pointing out where to block entrances and concentrate forces. The soldiers followed her calmly, inspired by her steady demeanor. The battle continued for hours. Explosions, shouted commands, and the hiss of Silen's wings filled the air. Leora moved fluidly, helping soldiers adjust positions and reinforcing weak points. She noticed small patterns in the enemy's tactics and relayed this information back to Claire. The human adapted quickly, giving new orders that countered each move effectively. Each time an alien soldier faltered, Leora guided them gently while Scylan stayed close to protect them from stray fire. Inside the medbay, the alien doctors monitored their systems, making sure critical supplies were ready. Claire occasionally called for updates on defensive structures and reinforcements. She remained calm and organized, offering solutions and strategies that amazed even the most experienced commanders. The bond between human, elf, and dragon grew stronger with each passing moment. Scylan shifted to position himself between potential threats and the human, his eyes constantly scanning the battlefield. Leora stayed near him, ready to act immediately. The human continued issuing orders with steady confidence. She identified hidden entry points the enemy might use and suggested traps and diversions. Alien soldiers executed the strategies carefully. The outpost became a coordinated defense rather than a chaotic scramble. Leora felt pride and admiration for the human. She understood that courage was not just physical strength but also the ability to maintain clarity under pressure. The enemy launched a concentrated strike on the western wall. Leora led a small squad to reinforce the defense. Silence, fire, and agility allowed them to hold the attackers long enough for the reinforcements to arrive. The human, still on her support frame, directed movements with quiet authority. Alien soldiers found their confidence and moved with purpose. The tide of the attack began to shift. Leora and Scylan worked in perfect synchrony with the human's orders. Each maneuver, each counterattack became more effective. The enemy seemed surprised by the human's foresight and strategy. Explosions shook the walls, but the defenders held firm. Claire's mind stayed sharp, analyzing the battlefield and issuing commands. Her calmness acted as a shield for the frightened soldiers. She remained unshaken despite the dangers around her. The alien commanders started to trust her judgment fully. Leora watched as their fear turned into determination. Scylan moved swiftly to block any enemy that approached too close. He hissed warningly and struck with precise force, protecting the human at all costs. The skirmishes continued through the day. Every attack met with a coordinated defense. Leora adjusted plans on the spot based on Claire's advice. She helped stabilize weak points and guided soldiers to safety when needed. The human's intellect and strategic thinking gave them an edge, even though she could not fight directly. By evening, the enemy forces began to falter. Leora, Scylan, and Claire had orchestrated a defense that minimized casualties and held the outpost firmly. The soldiers began to cheer, feeling inspired and confident. The human had become the heart of their resistance. The elf could feel the bond deepening. She understood that this partnership of human, elf, and dragon would be essential in the battles ahead. Together they had proven that calm minds and careful strategy could defeat chaos and fear. The third part of the story focused on battle tactics, teamwork, and the extraordinary calm of a human mind guiding others through danger. Leora and Scylan had become more than protectors. They were part of a united front with the human whose courage inspired everyone around her. Night fell over the outpost, and the distant sounds of explosions continued. Leora remained near the medbay entrance, her eyes scanning every corridor. Scylan crouched beside her, alert and ready to act at the first sign of danger. Inside, Claire rested in her support frame, her breathing calm, her eyes sharp. Despite the pain from 17 broken bones, her mind remained clear and focused. Alien soldiers moved quietly through the halls, following orders that Claire had given earlier. Leora helped coordinate defensive positions, making adjustments based on Claire's observations. The dragon shifted slightly, wings brushing the floor, ready to strike at intruders. Outside, enemy forces were regrouping. Scouts had been spotted near the perimeter, and small skirmishes continued. Leora received a report that one group was attempting to breach the western wall. Without hesitation, she led a small team to reinforce the area. Scylan flew low overhead, breathing controlled bursts of fire to push back approaching enemy drones. Inside the medbay, Claire continued issuing instructions. She indicated where reinforcements should be sent and how to organize supplies efficiently. Her calm voice gave confidence to everyone, even the youngest soldiers who had never faced such danger. Leora watched the interaction and felt a deep respect for the human. She realized that courage could be measured not by strength alone, but by the ability to stay calm and think clearly in a crisis. The enemy launched a concentrated assault on the southern gate. Leora and her team moved quickly, using barriers and fire from Scylla to hold the attackers at bay. The human gave directions, identifying weak points and suggesting adjustments that allowed the defenders to maintain their positions. Alien soldiers began to rely on Claire's guidance more than ever. Their confidence grew as they saw the enemy being pushed back. Leora noticed how the dragon moved seamlessly with her, covering blind spots and protecting the human from potential threats. The bond between human, elf, and dragon became stronger with each encounter. Hours passed with a constant rhythm of attack and defense. Each move, each order, was executed with precision. The human's calm planning turned chaos into order. Leora provided support where needed, moving soldiers to stronger positions, adjusting barriers and coordinating with Scylla to maximize the dragon's effectiveness. The alien staff monitored the medbay, ready to respond to emergencies. Claire remained the center of calm, analyzing reports, giving instructions, and ensuring that resources were used efficiently. Her mind remained focused despite the intense pain of her injuries. Leora watched and learned from her composure, understanding that leadership could be shown even when one could not fight directly. The enemy attempted a stealth approach through the maintenance tunnels. Scylla detected them early and hissed a warning. Leora led a squad to intercept, using careful tactics that minimized risk. The humans' instructions guided them, and the attackers were neutralized before reaching the medbay. The soldiers were amazed by the humans' foresight. They began to understand that intelligence and calm judgment could be as powerful as weapons. Throughout the night, Leora and Scylla moved between defensive positions, always staying close to the human's support frame. Each time the enemy attempted a new approach, Claire adapted, giving instructions that countered effectively. Her calmness became a shield for the soldiers, and her strategy held the outpost intact. The first light of dawn illuminated the battlefield. The enemy forces had been pushed back but were still nearby. Leora stood with Scylla, looking over the outer walls, assessing damage and planning next moves. Inside, Claire prepared for another day, still giving orders and refining strategies. The alien soldiers looked to her for direction and felt reassured. Leora realized that this day had proven the human's extraordinary strength of mind. Despite severe injuries, Claire had not only survived, but had led a successful defense. Her calmness, intelligence, and determination had inspired everyone around her. Scylla moved close, brushing against the human's support frame, and Claire reached out to stroke the dragon. A small smile appeared on her face. The bond between them was unbreakable, forged through danger and shared purpose. The elf understood that their partnership would be crucial in the days ahead. Together they had turned fear into order, chaos into strategy. The fourth part of the story emphasized defense, strategy, and the extraordinary calm of a human mind guiding others. Leora and Scylla had become active partners in the humans' plans, and the outpost had survived a night of relentless attacks through courage, focus, and teamwork. The sun had barely risen, and the outpost was already preparing for the final assault. Leora stood near the central command center, her eyes sharp and ready. Scylla crouched beside her, wings partially open, glowing eyes scanning the horizon. Inside the command center, Claire remained on her support frame, calm and focused. The human's breathing was steady, and her mind worked quickly, analyzing reports and planning strategies. Alien soldiers moved efficiently, following the instructions that Claire had been giving for hours. Her calm voice reassured them, guiding each decision and movement. Outside the walls, enemy forces advanced with a mix of heavy machinery and soldiers. Sensors had detected multiple divisions converging on the outpost. Leora felt the tension in the air and adjusted positions of the defenders, coordinating with Scylla to cover vulnerable points. The dragons controlled bursts of fire kept small enemy groups at bay while Leora directed reinforcements. Inside, Claire gave precise instructions, identifying potential weaknesses in the enemy's plan and suggesting adjustments that kept the defenders a step ahead. Alien commanders were amazed at her clarity and focus despite her severe injuries. Leora watched as soldiers executed their orders efficiently, their confidence inspired by the human's steady presence. Scylla moved swiftly between positions, guarding the human and intervening wherever danger appeared. The bond between them had grown unbreakable. Hours passed with constant attacks and counterattacks. Each time the enemy tried a new approach, Claire adapted, giving instructions that neutralized the threat. Her calmness became a shield for everyone, allowing soldiers to act without fear. Leora provided active support, reinforcing positions, moving supplies, and guiding troops as needed. She observed the battlefield and anticipated enemy moves, sharing insights with the human who incorporated them seamlessly into her strategy. The outpost became a well-coordinated defense rather than a frantic struggle. Enemy forces began to falter as the defenders held firm. Leora led a squad to intercept a group attempting to breach the northern wall. Scylla flew overhead, breathing fire in precise bursts that destroyed enemy machinery without harming structures. The human directed their actions, identifying the best positions and timing their counterattacks. Alien soldiers began to rely fully on Claire's guidance, acting with confidence and skill. The final assault reached its peak. Explosions shook the walls and debris fell around them. Leora remained vigilant, defending the human and ensuring soldiers stayed in position. Scylla darted between attackers, striking swiftly to protect the command center. Claire analyzed the situation and issued final orders. Her calm, sharp mind anticipated enemy movements, allowing the defenders to outmaneuver them. Slowly, the enemy began to retreat, unable to break the coordinated defense. The soldiers cheered, inspired by the human's courage and intellect. Leora stood beside Claire, feeling pride and admiration. She realized that the human's calmness and clear thinking had saved countless lives and held the outpost intact. Scylla nudged the human gently, and she responded with a small smile. The bond between them had been tested and proven. Together they had turned chaos into strategy, fear into confidence, and danger into victory. Alien commanders expressed their amazement at how a human could maintain composure despite 17 broken bones and continue to lead effectively. The outpost was damaged but secure. Soldiers worked to repair walls and systems, guided by Claire's instructions. Leora and Scylla assisted where needed, their presence a constant reassurance. The final part of the story highlighted the human's extraordinary strength of mind, the elves' vigilance and support, and the dragon's protective role. Together they had created a united force that could withstand overwhelming odds. As calm returned to the outpost, Leora looked at Claire and Scylla, feeling a deep respect and bond. She knew that this partnership would be remembered for years, a testament to courage, strategy, and the power of calm determination in the face of extreme adversity. The story ended with a sense of hope and strength, showing that true power comes not only from weapons and strength, but from intelligence, focus, and the bonds formed between those who fight together.